All right, hello everyone. Welcome to our May 2023 Portals Community Call. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. Really pleased, as always, to be here with our Portals Community Call host, Nick Hayduk of Engineered Code. Before I hand things over to him and to our special guest, returning special guest this month, Franco Musso, I just want to add a couple of housekeeping notes. First, we do welcome your questions to everyone on the line here. Please do enter them anytime into the questions block. We will keep an eye on that. We'll also be recording today's event. We'll be sharing that out with everyone who registered in a follow-up email. So with that, I think we're ready to begin. I'm going to hand things over to Nick to begin.
Awesome, thank you, Jason. Yeah, let's get into it. I'm excited, as always, to have Franco with us, and look forward to seeing what he's doing with the Scottish Summit website. So that's our main topic for today, and let's dive in. So quick intro, if you're new around here, my name is Nicholas Hayduk. I'm president and software engineer with Engineered Code Consulting Inc. Here in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. I'm a Microsoft MVP that's been working with Power Pages, Power Apps, Portals last 13 or so years now. If you haven't already, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, follow us on Twitter, check out our blog, which is active again. We're planning on doing about one post a month, so we've got a couple blog posts up there, and we've announced a series of blog posts that people seem to be keen, where we look at all the different kind of more advanced pro code type techniques that we're seeing Microsoft release in the Power Pages templates. So this past month, I looked at basically using forms for the layout, but then they use kind of custom JavaScript and the web API for saving records back to Dataverse. So over the coming months, I'll be looking at different techniques that we see within the Power Pages templates. Some I may like, other ones I may have some comments on. So if you're interested in that, you can check out our blog. We've got our YouTube channel where we release our weekly tips. I think I recorded up to 219 the other night, so a few are in the queue to get released. So we've got a few of those out there, as well as crm.audio, which is the podcast. A new episode was released, I think it was this morning, or it was released by George Dubinsky in Australia, so it might have been yesterday, it might have been tomorrow. It's hard to keep track, but a new episode on templates is released, and we did record a new one earlier this week as well, so look forward to that being released here in the next few weeks as well. So that's a little bit about me, and where you can find some other stuff kind of Power Pages related. As always, really happy to have our partners on this whole endeavor, Jason Gumpert and the team at MS Dynamics World. If you're not already signed up for their newsletter and all the great stuff that they do, I strongly recommend. There's no better source for news about Power Pages, Power Platform, all the kind of good, fun Microsoft stuff. So thanks again to Jason and his entire team over there. Agenda. So we do have a few kind of news items, and then we'll get into today's topic again. That's we got Franco, who's here to talk to us about the Scottish Summit website that he has that he's working on and doing with Power Pages. So he's gonna take us through that. So really looking forward to that. We'll then talk about the date and time of our next Portals community call, and if time allows, we'll do some Q&A using the question block. Okay, so let's talk about some Portal news. A few pretty exciting things have come up here over the last month or so since we last gathered. So the first one is the Power Pages ALM using solutions. There's some a blog post on that from Microsoft. I believe it's available in preview now. This could be a game changer in terms of how we do ALM. Right now, there's a few different options. With this, essentially, you'll be able to kind of have certain data from Dataverse actually be transported across between environments using solutions. So it is a pretty big shift in how to kind of think about it, how it works. There's some changes to the data model, so it's it's definitely a shift, but it's something that if you're doing Power Pages, especially if you're just getting something kind of new started, now's the time to look into that and see, what are the timelines for it to get to be generally available, and whether you should be embracing that sooner on your projects. So it's cool to see that that's come into fruition. I think that's been something that they've been talking about for years now, and it's cool to see that it's kind of out there and ready for people to try. Next item on our list, we've got the Design Studio update. So the Power Pages Design Studio, the low-code, kind of no-code editor for citizen developers, has a few new features. And this is honestly, this is where Microsoft is making their investment. This is where we're seeing a lot of new things added to. So they've got undo and redo. They've got stuff for section background images. They've got design control for certain components. The ability to create hyperlinks, some drag and drop stuff. So there's a whole bunch of features that are now available within the Power Pages Design Studio. That Design Studio is something that I'm using more and more. There was a time where I really just used it for the clear cache button, but honestly, it is something that I think is a very powerful tool. And whether it's for the table permissions or setting up some basic lists and forms, there's a lot you can do in there. You don't have to go back so much to the old portal management app. So definitely, whereas before I wouldn't say I steered people away, but it was one of many tools, and it's starting to become the primary place where a lot of people are doing their development. So it's cool to see that get even more features. And then finally here, there's some nice documentation available on virtual tables and Power Pages. I think the community as a whole is going to be hearing a lot more about using virtual tables with Power Pages. It's in theory been supported for a long time. I think, in fact, when I first kind of got started on my MVP journey 5 or 6 years ago, it was one of my first sets of blog posts was looking at how virtual tables were supported with Power Pages or Power Apps portals or Dynamics 365 portals or whatever it was called at the time. But back then, it wasn't that it wasn't supported. It was just, it kind of happened to work. But now there's definitely an emphasis and a promotion of, hey, this is how you kind of start working with external data sources in Power Pages. This is how you should do it. There's row-based security. Microsoft is going to be pushing on this as an architecture for building web applications that talk to, say, a SQL server, right? If you have SQL server, you put a virtual table provider on top of that, and now you can build web applications on top of SQL pretty quickly and easily with Power Pages. So something to take a look at if virtual tables is not something you've really kind of considered in the past. Not only are they supported with Power Pages, but it's, I think, going to become a bigger and bigger story and use case for Power Pages. Okay, one last thing here. I just wanted to give a shout out to Tino Rabe. He is producing a Power Pages and Beyond, which is a weekly newsletter on LinkedIn that basically highlights different community contributions related to Power Pages. So if you're interested in Power Pages, which I'm assuming if you're here you are, go ahead and get the link to his newsletter. There's honestly, I'm finding more and more people that I've never even heard of. It used to be back in the day, the Power Pages people kind of knew each other because the community wasn't that big. Now I'm seeing videos and content from all sorts of people all over the world, and it's awesome. So it's a great way to stay up to date, a great way to see content from a whole bunch of different people. So strongly recommend that you take a look at that newsletter from Tino. So he's doing a great job. Okay, that's all I had in terms of news. So at this point, I want to welcome back Franco. Today's topic, as I mentioned, it has something to do with Scottish Summit, something to do with Power Pages. So we can hand that over to Franco. Franco, go ahead and introduce yourself and take it away. Looking forward to seeing what you got for us today.
Hey everyone, thanks a lot for joining. I can see there's no end of community heroes in the audience, so not at all intimidating. So the Scottish Summit is, as you're probably aware of if you've seen any of my content, my favourite of all the tech conferences throughout the year. So I'm going to show you what I've been building. We're moving away Scottish Summit from having their own website and a sponsor portal to marrying the two together. So as the products become more and more capable, it's made more and more sense to do so. As I've got some of the build already up and running. Are you able to see my screen?
Yep, we sure can.
Okay, cool. So you might say I've gone a bit crazy with the branding. So they've got a very strong brand already with the purples, the pinks. I've got my tracky top that I love from Scottish Summit last year. So what we've done, you might notice the tartan in the background. That's actually on the official register of tartans. So I thought make use of that. And anyone that's new to portals and Power Pages, what you might not be aware of is just about everything that you see on screen on a portal is essentially an advanced find. So if you're not looking at an out-of-the-box configurable list or form, it's essentially built using an advanced find or essentially fetch XML, whether that's through advanced find, fetch XML builder, Dataverse REST builder, whatever you use for that. So in theory, if you're comfortable with building fetch XML reports or using advanced find, you've got a real good head start with getting into portals. So what we've got going on, various sections throughout the site. We've got Cheryl, who I believe is on the call. Hey, Cheryl, with some cool quotes about her experience with Scottish Summit as a new speaker. I was also a new speaker. Big themes about inclusion, really do an awesome job of uplifting new speakers, people from different backgrounds, different perspectives. Part of what we're going to build out today then, along with that theme of using advanced finds and fetch XML to get our content onto the portal, is going to be, we're going to replace this currently hard-coded previous speakers section with a dynamic query to say, look at all the speakers from previous years, let's pull some at random, and that's what we're going to populate this area of the portal with. Another thing we're going to do is to output sponsors. So part of the functionality, as I said, is this acts as a sponsor portal, sponsor management, so they can upload their branding. So I'll take you a quick tour through that. I'll not waffle on with them all the way through, but the idea here is we're trying to make it as seamless as possible. So we need to get these 4 items from the sponsors, and that's what imagery, that's what branding we use for them, whether that's for banners in the building, if it's on social media, if it's in printed materials or what have you. So we needed to make that as simple as possible so people would actually bother to do this. So if you imagine the usual experience would be, maybe you've got a list of all these activities to complete, you've got to click through, go to a file, create an activity in this example, upload a note to that activity. It's just rather click heavy. Whereas now all I've got to do is choose the file that I'm interested in, Portal Web API uploads that to the relevant note if it already exists, and the relevant activity if it already exists, or it creates it if not. So we've got various bits of media we asked for. We've got a banner, we've got a logo in various formats, and a single color logo as well. So hopefully you agree that that's just about as low friction as it could possibly get. You've got the option to delete if you want to replace that for whatever reason. Let's say I wanted just the white logo for that one, or perhaps I wanted this one. So that's the experience for sponsors. For attendees wanting to register, we've got they're already making use of some industry standards, so Eventbrite and Sessionize. We've got a few different routes through for that. So on the homepage, and this is all fully responsive, as you might imagine, mobile is going to be a big use case, I expect, especially for people on the day. So if I want to get my ticket, which for anyone who hasn't registered, get your tickets now, only 113 remaining, it's free with a donation. So all of that's taken care of by Eventbrite in this example, just because that's already what was up and running and working for Scottish Summit. And then everything that we see on the speakers and the sessions side originates from Sessionize, and Matty Beard, awesome guy within the community, does loads for Scottish Summit, has built an integration to get that Sessionize information into Dataverse. So really makes my life a lot easier. So I'm looping over that with some cards, which we'll see an example of later as well. And if you want to see some further information, you can just click the plus icon. That'll load this custom modal. And that's kind of the pattern for a lot of the website. So then, for example, if we go to sessions, we've got much the same information, but from a different table. This is from speaker sessions, if you've used event management in Dynamics before. And the idea is we just wanted more control over the styling than what an out-of-the-box form would give. We've got another route through to tickets, so maybe with SEO in mind that we want a specific landing page for booking your tickets, but again, just surfacing that that Eventbrite widget. So that's where we're up to with the build so far. So let's say I want to get a list of sponsors output on the portal. You might notice I said we're using cards for a lot of these layouts. So what I thought might be useful, I've put a boilerplate up on my blog ready if anyone wants to copy these. So it's not got the tartan, unfortunately, but it's got the layouts. It's responsive, it's got flexbox, and essentially, if you wanted to copy these, what we would do, we'd build our advanced find like we'll do in a moment. We'll loop over those with liquid, and this part we'd repeat for however many cards that we want, or however many results we get from the fetch XML. So I'm going to dig into advanced find. And I'm interested in sponsorships. And let's say what I'm interested in is sponsorships where the event is Scottish Summit 2023. And perhaps where that sponsor, let's see what other fields we've got, where that sponsor has paid. I think that's good enough for our criteria. I'll leave it as that. So it's really simple as that to do queries for the portal. Next thing that I want to do is to say which columns do we want to show. So maybe add, in fact, we'll go with that for now. I'm going to get my edit filters for fetch XML. And that's it. So not had to write any code whatsoever so far. I've got my fetch XML query. I'm going to lift that and drop it into a new web template. I need to tell Liquid that there's some fetch XML coming, so I'll say open some fetch XML tags. Maybe this is our sponsors query. We'll close that. The first thing I want to check is whether that's returned any results. I'd maybe go a bit further with that, and if this was a query that might bring back tens or hundreds of results, maybe I'd add something like count equals 5 or whatever we want to limit that to. I could control the sort order. But what I'm going to say, first of all, check whether the number of results is greater than 0. So if you've not seen Liquid before, you probably see it's fairly easy to read. Assuming English is your spoken language. And then, so I'm saying if there are any results, we want to do whatever is in this block of code. And let's say for each result in that results object, so for that query, .results.entities, do something with each of these. So I need to marry that now with the HTML that I had in that snippet. So if you're doing this from scratch, you'd need both the HTML that you'll infuse with your Liquid and the CSS to do the styling. I already have this styling in the Scottish Summit template, so I don't need to worry about that. This is what I need. So I'm going to say outside of the loop, get this div with a class of cards. I want to close that. And then inside the loop, we're just going to put some boilerplate content in for now. But what I expect to see is that a card is going to repeat. In fact, I'll get rid of that word speaker from the snippet. That's not relevant here. But what I expect to see is that's going to repeat for every one of the sponsors that are on the that return in the query. And then what we'll do is swap out those placeholders with some actual fields. I'm doing this as its own template for now, thinking that it might well be a reusable module throughout the site. Maybe they want that just below the footer or something like that on every page, or maybe it will end up as a dedicated page. So to get that on the portal, I'm going to create a page template. This wouldn't be required if I'm just including it in another page, but for now, I want to be able to test it, see it on its own. So I've got a page template. Final thing, I need a URL. I need to know where that's going to slot within the site. So I need a web page. You might notice that when I search now, and perhaps you don't use the portal management app, you do everything in the design studio. But you may notice if you are using the portal management app that your page template doesn't show immediately. And it's a bit of a convenience feature. It's only showing you page templates that are already in use on other web pages. So what I've done there, just change the view and said this is the page template I want to see. So as Nicholas alluded to earlier, nice and handy to go back to the design studio to clear the cache. So once that's saved, I'm going to sync my changes, preview that on the portal. So sync says that anything that I've changed in Dataverse, anything I've changed in the portal management app, or perhaps if I was editing in Visual Studio Code, bring back all those changes to this session of Power Pages. And when I preview, that's then going to clear the cache, push that up to the portal. So if I now go to /sponsors, I've got some pretty useless placeholder content, but I've got cards and they're responsive. So that's my starting point. So we're going to build on that just by pulling some of those fields from our fetch XML query. So let's say, first of all, we want to, maybe for the sake of speed, because I know I do like to label the point sometimes, we're going to get rid of the image. I'll replace that with the sponsor name. So I'm just going to split my fetch XML over multiple lines just to make it easier to read. So there's the first thing that I want, the event name. Oh, sorry, not the event name, the name of the sponsor. So each of my results I've called results just to make it a bit easier. I find it easier for reuse. It's not necessarily a requirement. You could call that whatever you want, but I want to say get one of the values from that result, and it's this Microsoft Event Management name from the sponsor record. Maybe want to output the sponsorship type, just as an example. So I'm going to say maybe in one of these labels, I'll say output the results dot type, and that's a complex record type. Sorry, complex column type. So I need to specify in this example, do I want to output the numeric value or do I want to output the label? So I just say dot label. And then perhaps I want to say the sponsorship category, if that's populated. Let's go for that. Again, it's a complex type, so I'm going to say whether it's the value or the label. It'd be much the same with lookups, by the way. So with lookups, it would be whether you want the GUID, which would be .id, or you want the name, which would simply be .name. I'm going to keep it as simple as that for now. If I had a sponsorship, a page for an individual sponsor, I could maybe link that here to say something like sponsor detail. That handy format lets me just put in the partial URL for the page. So a lot more we can do there, but you can see it's super quick to put these things together. In fact, I'll add that to the navigation. So moving that to the main navigation, it's as simple as that with Power Pages. Don't have to mess around with web link sets for anyone that's done this the old way. I'm going to sync to bring in those changes. And preview. So I can see that's now in the portal. And I've got the names of my sponsors. I've got the type and the sponsorship level. If I had a sponsor detail page, then you can maybe spot in the status bar that would be pointing to the sponsor detail page. So it's as simple as that to build these card layouts. Usually I'd use components from Bootstrap 3, but more and more I'm finding on all my portal projects at the moment, I'm being asked for card layouts, and there isn't one in Bootstrap 3. There is in Bootstrap 5, which is coming very soon to Power Pages. Looking forward to that. But for now, you can just come over to this site, grab that boilerplate HTML, that CSS, and like you saw there, we're just piping in some data using fetch XML and then liquid to output that. Just take that one step further, and that will be to say, make these conditional. So I don't want to show any blank labels, any blank badges in that output. So I'm going to say only if there is a sponsorship type do I want to show that. And likewise, only if there's a sponsorship category do I want to output that. So that, believe it or not, it was enough to get me excited about portals. So I already knew Advanced Find. That was my first kind of super user skill within Dynamics CRM back in the day. I'd already cobbled together a few reports, so portals seemed like the next logical step. So we've got one example there, our sponsor cards. Let's now take a look at this area on the home page, the previous speakers. So I've got some markup already. I've got the classes. So what I'm going to do is maybe inspect one of those. Get an example of the HTML. In fact, I'll get the whole HTML and break that down. So we've got a similar setup. We've got a containing div. So before it was a class of cards, this time it's a class of headshots. Maybe leave myself a few clues. Then I'm going to have a loop. So within that, I'm going to say, start the loop here. These comments are just giving myself some clues. So basically, what do I want to repeat each time? So there's no point having all that information 4 times. Now I'm just going to get rid of all but one. And if you check out any of the content on my blog or YouTube regarding outputting Bootstrap components using Liquid, it's very much the same approach, and the snippets that I share very much like this. So it's just about, where does the fetch XML go, what goes outside the loop, and which bits do you want to repeat. Now, hopefully in future, we're going to have a repeater component as part of Power Pages, something that we discussed at Power Platform Conference last year, an awesome session that Nikita headed up. It's been exciting to see a lot of what we all discussed come to life. And it was funny, in fact, earlier on, Nicholas, when you mentioned about the news, I remember in the olden days on Portal community calls, we were really clutching at straws at what the news might be, whereas now it could be a full-on hour-long session each time just on the news. So we're going to output this, and I'm going to take a look at an advanced find and some Liquid to populate this with dynamic content rather than static. So we think we've got such an accessible event, such an inclusive event that's open to all speakers, old and new, Microsoft community, beginners, experts. Let's maybe say pull these at random rather than saying these are 4 specific speakers that we always show. So I'm going to jump into a web template again. More and more of this you can do with the portal, with Power Pages and the Design Studio. I'm still slowly transitioning away. I've been using the portal management app for so long. So I'm going to say this is the previous speakers section. And what I'll do this time, instead of publishing it as its own page, I'm going to include it on the home page. But this essentially will also be a reusable section. Anyway, we want to use previous speakers, we can include this. I want it in its own section, so I'm going to copy this part of the HTML as well. So before our content, we've got a section and we've got a header. So maybe for those of you that are more comfortable with classic advanced find, let's take a look at doing it that way. So I'm looking for speakers. As I said, Matty Beard's done the hard work for me here already, having done this integration from Sessionize into Dynamics, into Dataverse. So I can do things like get that speaker's speaker image. That's going to be the URL from Sessionize. Nice benefit there is that Sessionize seemingly has a nice fast CDM for their images. So maybe I want where the speaker image contains data, where the status is active, and maybe where the event, so go into related records, where the event struggling to find the name field, not sure what I've got wrong there. Right, sorry, ignore that. So I'm going to select some specific events. What I would usually do is, so what I'm aiming at is I'm trying to get the previous Scottish Summit events. As you see, there are various other events as well as Scottish Summit managed on this platform. So I'm going to, in this environment, so I'm just going to maybe select those previous events instead. So if the speaker is from one of these events, include it in our fetch XML. I'm going to tweak which columns I want. So this is much like what I was doing in Modern Advanced Find. What do I want to output? So I'm going to say, might be useful to see which of the events they spoke at. I definitely want to see the speaker image. Let's say that's it for now. No, in fact, and the about, maybe we want to show a bit of a bio as well. So that's all good. I'll maybe, if this was the real world, I'd save my view for a way to easily get back to that. But I'm going to download the fetch XML. Drop that into my template. So again, I need to tell it that there's some fetch XML coming. So even though the output's going to be different, the process, as you can see, is much the same. I'd like to give my query a fairly meaningful name, so maybe previous speaker's query. So that's a starting point. That's going to get me all the records. I'll do a similar thing to before. So I'll do this as a matter of course in each of the templates. So first of all, check whether there's more than 0 results. So that's in the results.entities object. And I'm interested in the size of that. So in other words, the count of records. So if that's greater than 0, do all this. In fact, not quite there. I want to do it just before this headshots part. And then which part do I want to loop? So I've left myself that clue with the comments. So I'm going to say for each result in results.entities, But need to remember not to include the size on this one. So this is just saying for each result in that array. I've started the for loop. I need to close the for loop. So that's with N4. And now it's just a matter of populating those fields. So name with the name. That's a simple field, just a text field. Don't need to do anything with that. The image is quite helpfully just the URL, so I can populate the source of the image. And perhaps for graceful degradation, what I want to say is only if there's a speaker image. Do I want to output that? So that saves us having the broken image experience, the strange icon that can sometimes break the layouts. So, and if sometimes what I do is as a fallback, I'd maybe say else, and we'd have some kind of silhouette image or anonymous user, whatever we want to show instead of nothing. So making the alt text dynamic there as well. In fact, sorry, not with speaker image, but with the speaker's name. So wherever I've got these double curly brackets, that's output, whereas here where I've got the percentage curly brace, that's logic. So I'd use that for things like if statements, loops, assigning variables, all that good stuff. And maybe in the meta, whereas it was previously a bit of job title position kind of thing, maybe replace that with the start of the about that speaker. Now that could be, I guess, thousands of characters. So maybe what would be useful to do is to use a filter and say we want to limit that to maybe the first 200, 300 characters. So where I've got the pipe character, that's a filter in Liquid. It allows us to transform the output in some way. So a very useful resource, which I always point people to, is available Liquid filters for Power Pages. Anyone getting started with Power Pages now is so lucky because the documentation is awesome. So much more to it than when I was getting started. So first of all, this is a string, something I want to do with text. I can do things like escape, which Nicholas covered recently on the community, on the Engineered Code YouTube channel. Very useful. So things like if you want to output this safely in JSON, how you want to treat new lines, if you want to remove certain characters or words from a string, all kinds of useful stuff. The equivalent of find and replace. Yeah, what I was interested in there was the truncate. So you can either truncate by number of characters or truncate by number of words. And it's just a matter, as you can see there, pipe character, what's the name of the filter you're in after, and then any parameters. So that's the first one that I'm interested in, truncate. The next thing I'm going to do, in fact, let's preview that live first of all. So I'm going to include this in my landing page template. So I'm going to replace that existing include with my newly created one. That was the one that had the hard-coded speakers in, and in fact shouldn't need any of this now. I've included that in the web template. So you see, it's as simple as that to reuse modular code from other web templates, and there's some brilliant new functionality for this that we can parameterize and use these as components in the design studio. So check out Nick Dolman's blog on that one. So for now, all that's saying is just bring it in exactly as it is. So taking this further, what I might do is parameterize it to say this is how many speakers I want to return, maybe specify whether I want that to be random or in a set order, maybe choose whether I wanted it as cards or an accordion or carousel. But for now, just a simple include, so I'm going to save that. Let's sync and preview. The whole thing hasn't broken, that's usually a good start, but I'm not seeing any speakers. Let's see why that is. So my query is called previous speakers query. That matches what I'm doing here. So when I'm checking the number of results, so the first thing that I would usually check for that is to see, have I got the appropriate permissions? I would say yes, I do, because I'm already outputting speakers on other pages. I'm already outputting events on other pages. So I know this isn't the happy path, but you will most likely come across this kind of thing in the real world. So let's work through this together. So the name matches. Let's maybe say I want to output the number of results on the page as a tester. So I'm going to say before that if statement, I want to output previous speakers.results.entities.size. If you're wondering why I'm doing this and you're new to Liquid, there's not really a way to debug behind the scenes. So this is a common thing that we'd print something to the page. Right, so that does suggest that it is permissions. So let me see what I've got going on there. So I'm looking for permissions to do with the speakers table. Yep, that all looks good. Do please shout up if you can see a typo that I've missed. Right, I'll give that maybe one more minute. If it's not jumping out at us, we'll move swiftly on. In fact, what would probably be a good idea is to check whether our advanced find would actually return any information, any results. Oh, right, so it's nothing to do with the portal. Right, so perhaps we only have them for this year's. Sorry about that. Should have checked that first. So I'm using a field that isn't populated. So let's say speaker engagements that where the event is one of these. Sorry, I'm quite new to this data model as well. Apologies for that. So yeah, strangely, in order to show some data, you got to actually have some data. Okay, we're getting there. So 256 results we probably don't want to show, but I've got something in mind for that. I said we're going to randomize it and show a set number. So in fact, I'd done it as a relative URL, but this is coming from Sessionize rather than from the portal. So that's one tweak to make. So I'm going to say, get rid of this part. So we've just got the entire URL coming. And then I'm going to look for a liquid filter that is to do with an array, because I know that the results.entities is an array. I've used random quite often. So let's say I just want to show one featured track on the Spotify site, or I just want to show in the footer one random quote or something like that. But you see this returns a single randomly selected item. What I want to do is to randomize the order of the results and get a number of those results. So what I'm going to do instead is to use shuffle. There's a really handy page to get familiar with. So I'm going to say, just try that for now. So I'm going to add pipe character for a filter and shuffle. So in theory, that's going to take my existing results that are sorted by name, and it's going to shuffle them into a random order. So previously, yeah, alphabetical order, Adam and Adria coming first. So I'm going to say, assign a variable called speakers shuffled. And I want that equal to this query. And I want to shuffle. So what I need to do is to, in fact, I can comment that out for now. I'll get rid of it altogether in a moment. But I'm going to say replace where I was using, when I was looping over previous speakers query, and I want to loop over speakers shuffled. Let's give that a whirl. If this all seems quite chaotic, you've clearly not been to one of my sessions before. It's no more chaotic than usual. All right, so let's say speakers.shuffle.size and for result in speakers shuffled. Right, so I'm going to bring that back. Let's see what we've got in previous speakers. So not previous speakers, speakers shuffled. I'll share the results of this either way. So if it's not fixed within the call. If it's not fixed within the call, I'll fix it outside the call and share the code. Right, so finally got there. So we've got a shuffled list of headshots. So they're in our random order now. What I perhaps then want to do, rather than show all 256. So in fact, if you've not spotted the difference there, what I've done is set that to the array of results.entities rather than the entire query object. And then I've said, instead of before I tried looping through speakers shuffle.results.entities, that I don't need to do. So I'm just looping over that array. So what's not quite right is that I've got my headshot, the containing div, inside the loop, whereas I need it outside the loop. So same with this closing div. So we should be pretty much there now. And the final thing that I'm going to do is to say, limit how many of those we want to show. So for that, I'm going to use a property called forLoop.index. That's going to tell us of the loop, which item is this? Is it number 1? Is it number 100? So there you see we've got our output. It's responsive. And the idea with this shuffle, with this random feature, is we're making it more inclusive, giving everyone a chance to be showcased. Right, so let's say 256 is a lot. Let's say each time you come into the loop, if this is forLoop.index is less than or equal to 4, then you're good. And if you're interested in where the heck did that LE come from, another good place to look, again, if you're new to Liquid, is these liquid operators. And in fact, I'm using the wrong language there, so that was a very timely suggestion to come and take a look at this. So actually, that's what I need. So if it is less than or equal to 4. Yeah, sorry, I think I was thinking fetch XML, not Liquid.
Yeah, we can't have all the languages use the same syntax.
No, of course not. We put a lot of consultants out of jobs, I guess.
All right, well, we are at time. So Franco, I just want to say, I mean, this is amazing work. It's really nice to kind of watch someone show us how it's done in the real world. Sometimes in these things, it's it's all kind of happy path, and it's like the cooking shows where they mix everything together and then 10 seconds later out comes the cake. So it's really great to see someone actually kind of showing us how to do it and how it works in the real world. So really appreciate your time, really appreciate what you're doing to help the community, not only by presenting here today, but obviously with building the site and contributing to the Scottish Summit. It's obviously an awesome event. I can see there you got your 4 items there, just as you had hoped. So yeah, thanks a lot for joining us today. Let me see here. I'm going to quickly steal the presenter here and just make presenter, share my screen. So I just want to quickly say that our next call will be on June 15th, so about a month from now. Same regular time. No topic picked yet, but we will. If you've got any suggestions, please let us know. Thanks to Jason and the team at MS Dynamics World. And again, thanks to Franco, and hope to see you all next month.
Excellent. We will wrap it up there. Great job, Franco. Thanks as always, Nick, and thanks to everyone in the audience, and including for all of your encouraging comments and feedback as Franco went. That was great to see too. With that, we're going to close things out. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.